Stephanie, for those wonderful words and also for your friendship and your support. I'm so honored that Stephanie has agreed to co-chair our campaign for Attorney General. It's been wonderful to work with you for many years and to have your leadership on this campaign. And I want to thank the other co-hosts of this wonderful event. Thanks to Chris, thanks to Joan, thanks to Dana, thanks John for your help. It's so nice to look around the room and see so many friends and some new friends as well. So I'm Quentin Palfrey. Can you hear me okay?
I said that.
All right, I'll try and project. I know it's a big room. I'm Quentin Palfrey. I'm a proud Democrat running for Attorney General. And as a former Assistant Attorney General, alongside John, who is the Chief of the Civil Rights Division in the AG office, I've seen firsthand how much impact the people's lawyer can have in Milton and in communities all across the Commonwealth. When Trump was in office, it was really inspiring to see the AG fight back again and again and again against a corrupt and immoral administration. But now more than ever, with our fundamental rights under attack, with our democracy under attack, we need the Attorney General to lead on the really big issues we face. Racial injustice, the climate crisis, attacks on our democracy, attacks on workers' rights and reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, student loan debt and housing costs, gun violence. We have so much work to do. Now, I want to spend a few minutes talking about some of the challenges that we face that the AG can take a leadership role on. And I want to start with healthcare. So the opioid crisis and the coronavirus pandemic have laid bare some of the really big shortcomings in our healthcare system. Too many people have trouble accessing healthcare. It costs too much. It's the #1 driver of bankruptcy in the US. It's too expensive to get drugs. I was the first chief of the healthcare division in the AG office at the time that we were implementing Massachusetts health reform. And we worked really hard to try and make sure that everyone had access to high quality, affordable healthcare. I'm proud of the work we did, but I think there's a lot more to do. I think that we should move towards a single payer system. But during that time, we sued some predatory health insurance companies that were lying to Massachusetts residents. We got big recoveries for consumers and kicked three of those companies out of the jurisdiction. And that's the kind of thing that the people's lawyer can do. So recently the AG took on Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family, whose lies brought us the opioid crisis. And I think we need the AG to stand up for health care for everybody. I also think that the AG needs to help build an economy that works for everybody, not just the ultra-rich and big corporations. I had the great honor to serve in the White House under President Barack Obama. I was the senior advisor for jobs and competitiveness. I went back into the administration on day one of the Biden administration as acting general counsel of commerce, leading a team of several hundred lawyers and helping to launch the Build Back Better agenda. And we need the AG to stand up and fight for an economy that works for everyone, to stand up against wage theft, to stand up against Uber and Lyft trying to misclassify our workers and take away the benefits. We need to fight for a fair share amendment so people at the top, the very wealthy, pay a little bit more so we can invest in transportation and in education. And while we're talking about education, we need to make sure that we have an education system that works for every child in the state. Where you live and the color of your skin should not determine what kind of an education your kids get. And yet we're almost 70 years after Brown versus Board of Education. We still have segregated schools. There's still stunning inequalities in terms of the difference between the education you get in some communities and in other communities. And as the chief civil rights officer in the Commonwealth, we need to take on that educational inequality with the urgency it deserves. And I disagree with those, including one of my opponents, who believe that the solution to that challenge is to expand charter schools. We had that conversation in 2016 in Massachusetts. The voters rejected it. It was the wrong answer. The right answer is to invest in our public schools and to make sure that every child gets to start in life. We need to take on racial injustice in other ways as well. The murder of George Floyd and the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict are just the most recent reminders that there are two justice systems in America. We imprison too many people for too long for doing too little. Race has too much to do with who ends up in the criminal justice system, and we need an AG who will take a leadership role on criminal justice reform, on corrections oversight, on police accountability, on finally getting a handle on the corruption in the state police. We also need an AG who's going to bring urgency in the fight against the climate crisis. This is the issue that's going to determine what kind of a life our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren lead. We need to fight for a Green New Deal and urgently move towards a clean energy economy. Now more than ever, it's been a tough week. We need to stand up for reproductive rights. We need to make sure that Massachusetts has the strongest laws in the country, that they are enforced in the most aggressive possible way, and that we serve as a beacon and a leader on this issue. We need to stand up for LGBTQ rights. We saw in that opinion a radical right-wing agenda to dismantle not just reproductive rights, but LGBTQ rights. It even undermines the basis for banning laws against fighting against interracial marriage. Is in that opinion. It's a really, really scary moment. And we need to fight to rebuild our democracy. I've spent a lot of my career on this issue. In 2008, for Obama, I led a team of about 4,000 lawyers in Ohio. I founded a national organization called the Voter Protection Corps. And what we're seeing recently is that our democracy is literally under attack. An armed mob stormed to the Capitol to try and disrupt the peaceful transition of power. And even after that, when Joe Biden went down to John Lewis's hometown on Martin Luther King Day and said we have to do something about it, Mitch McConnell, Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, every member of the Republican caucus blocked meaningful reform at the national level. So what that means is that we need to lead on our democracy right here at home, and we still have a lot more work to do. We have a government that's not transparent enough. We can't even get we can't even get election day registration passed. But the most important thing we need to do is fight against special interest money in our elections. Never in the history of Massachusetts have we had an AG candidate supported by a corporate super PAC. But we are seeing that money flood into our elections time and time again since Citizens United. We saw it in the 2016 charter school fight. We saw it in the 2021 Boston mayor's race. We're seeing it with Uber and Lyft. And there is an open super PAC in my race, supported by Bain Capital, supported by the Walton family, supported by for-profit healthcare systems. And I have called on my opponents to push that money out of the race. Because I'll tell you this, if you want the AG to build on the leadership of that office that we've had under Maura Healey, if you want the AG to stand up for healthcare, for good jobs, for public schools, if you want the AG to take on housing costs, you need an AG who is independent of that corporate money. And I promise you that when I'm the next AG, I am going to fight for the people, not for the corporations, because that's what the people's lawyer does. That's the kind of AG I want to make, and I would be honored to have your support. So thank you all for coming out here tonight. I'd love to talk and take some questions if people have any, but I'm so honored to have your support here tonight.